Welcome to episode 29.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Who Did That Voice, where we take an in-depth look at voiceovers.
The holiday season is upon us, and there is no time like the present to book your holiday getaway with 3D Travel Company. Whether you want to set sail on the high seas or visit exotic and foreign locales, maybe your dream is to see a magical mouse, or maybe you long for a getaway that will universally appeal to all. For a limited time, my listeners receive a Disney gift card with qualifying Disney vacation purchases booked and traveled by the end of 2016. For more information on booking any of these trips, go to 3dtravelcompany.com and tell them Trenton sent you.
Merry Christmas and welcome to Who Did That Voice, the show where we take an in-depth look at voiceover. And now, here's your host, Trenton Larkin.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today's special guest is the legendary Mark Grau himself, owner and operator of the legendary Mark Grau Studios. So let's sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Who Did That Voice. Today on the show we have Mark Grau joining us today. Mark, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Who did that voice? Oh, hi. Thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for giving us some of your valuable time to chat with you a little bit about the voiceover industry and about your career.
My time's not valuable. I work for scale. So, okay. I'm kidding.
Well, Mark, the very first thing we always like to start off with is just to get a little background on who our individual is, our special guest, and how did you get into the voiceover industry?
Well, I did the, circuitous route of radio many moons ago. I was actually born in Hollywood at Queen of Angels. My dad used to anchor news at Channel 5. So I grew up with Daz Butler was my godfather, in fact, with him and Stan Freberg doing a live puppet show called Time for Beanie, which was live. And as a kid, I used to love, going on set and kind of watching. And then went to college and got, a BA in mass communications, and was ready to take the world by storm and realized, well, you need to work somewhere. So I ended up in all the hotbeds of media attention, like Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, Oregon, Washington, San Francisco, San Diego, doing radio. And at that point was doing a lot of characters, like on a morning show, but this was long before the Howard Sterns and the, Mark and Brian's, that kind of, so the door would fly open. I can't believe you just said that on the air, apologize. Okay. But my first love was doing production and doing voices and stuff, and got tired of the radio thing. For me, was very unstable. It was, we just want you to meet with a consultant, and it's like, well, let me grab my stuff and put it in the car. We know what that means. And basically worked my way back up to Hollywood and kind of, BS'd my way into a huge music studio back in this is the late 70s. And it was, amazing. I mean, I remember when I interviewed, I knew nothing about music. I mean, other than I love music, but as far as actually producing it. And absolutely, it's like, well, do you know how to bias 456 Ampex tape? It was like, does bias mean it doesn't like black people? I had no idea what the hell they were talking about. And anyway, got the job there and in charge of their media studio. They wanted to do, radio production, TV spots, that kind of stuff. And so that's how I first got involved. I'd always done character voices, playing around. There used to be an A&W drive-in restaurant, where people would drive in their cars and the actual waitress would come out to the car. And I remember sitting there, my brother and I doing voices. My mother would, that's not funny, obviously has a problem, now stop it. And of course, we'd be giggling, doing voices to it. And that just kind of, flourished and turned into what it is now. It just kind of, it's been a long route. I've been in LA here, and again, born here. I've been actually doing just specifically voiceover for about 44 years now. Yes, I am that old. There's answer squishy again. Okay, sorry.
Well, that's a very long career, 44 years.
No.
Well, Mark, I know back in 1994, you had an opportunity to voice the legendary Mario Brothers and Bowser as well in the video game Hotel Mario. And,
Yes.
and what was it like getting to voice both of the Mario Brothers, Mario and Luigi, and Bowser?
It was, I had no idea at the time that it would be voted one of the top 10 worst video games of all time. I still have people who call from all over the world going, "Hey, can we interview?" It's like, sure. At the time, honestly, this was Philips was actually, this was like their foray into CD-ROM stuff. It was a lot of fun. I mean, again, in many instances, and in this one, you're very dependent on the director, and they're kind of telling you where they want to go, and if they sign off, you go, great, happy. So yeah, it was fun. The characters were done independently. Occasionally they will have you do back-to-back characters, but if they're nice, they'll let you do a passive one, and they'll have possibly someone read in, cut that out, and then have you do the other character. So it was and I'm amazed at the longevity of that thing. So there's cutscenes. It's pretty crazy out there. There's this entire world of Hotel Mario out there that I have no idea about.
Well, I think everyone's love for Mario can help them sometimes look past those kind of things, because Mario and Luigi are characters that have always been super iconic, and everybody loves those characters, especially Bowser as a villain. He's a great villain that everyone loves to hate. So Mark, you've been involved with a lot of different video games, and what is it like for you to be able to take a character and be able to come back with it time and time again, like on the Ratchet and Clank games when you're able to play Mr. Zurkon?
Well, Mr. Zurkon's that's a fun role. It's interesting. When we came up with the voice, it was just kind of throwing around a couple of different things, and then it was, well, how about a deep booming voice for this little tiny robot character? The lines are fun. They let me ad-lib stuff. Some of it they'll keep. Some of it's completely tasteless, obviously, because it's me. And those I don't think maybe they'll do an expansion pack with awful things, but. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and he's very very blah, 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 kind of voice. And it's a fun character to do, and it's amazing to see when you get letters from kids that are even sick and all that kind of that sounds very heartstring, but it's amazing to me that a game can actually touch people that way, and they go, oh, that's Billy's favorite character, and he's not doing it. It's like, really? I mean, that's great. I mean, it's all makes you feel all warm and fuzzy. And the fact that when you have a recurring character like that, it's fun with a big franchise, and they keep bringing you back. It's wonderful. You couldn't be any better. Absolutely.
And when it keeps coming back time and time again, do you feel like you're able to kind of develop him more and make him more than what he was before?
Yeah, a little bit. It depends really on the script. With Zurkon, it's a little different in that most of them are very short scenes. When they brought on the Zurkon family, they had Mrs. Zurkon and all the kids. Yeah, that was kind of fun because it made him a little more human, even though he's a robot. But that was a little more fun because it was a lot more interaction.
Yeah.
A lot of his lines are just, that singular, now you die, kind of, that's basically,
yeah.
Just Zurkon think you smell bad, that kind of thing. So it's, yeah, it's fun. It's yeah.
Well, and you've had the privilege of playing him for nearly 10 years, since 2007. They've brought you back about 4 or 5 different times in the Ratchet and Clank games. So that's fantastic. And I'm sure we'll continue to see you as the future games for that series comes out.
We'll keep our fingers crossed. Send letters. No.
Well, I know you've also been able to be on some other great games like StarCraft, Mafia 3 that just recently came out, and Skylanders. What roles did you get to do, and what kind of stuff were you able to play on Mafia 3?
I played Vinny, one of the main guys, and then a bunch of incidentals, the riverboat captain. It's very interesting. In fact, in that game, there's a dialect because it takes place in New Orleans, in Louisiana. And there are certain parishes, I guess, there that speak a dialect called Yat, which is Y-A-T. In fact, I actually have only met one person. I tried to went, oh yeah, and knew what I was, it sounded, what the hell is a Yat? And it's an interesting, it's like Creole, Cajun-y kind of feel with Southern thing, but very Bronxy. And it's a really, so I actually had to work with a wonderful dialect coach, Eliza Jane, who's amazing, and really kind of try to master that dialect, because it's a very interesting one. It's different. As actors, most of us, you have characters that you can call up dialects that are natural. The usual, Scottish, Irish, pirate, German, Asian, whatever you want.
Yeah.
That's pretty, but something like that's that specific. It was like you think you're hitting it, and it's like no, somebody that. So I had to, look at videos and listen to them of people actually speaking it and working with her, and it worked out great. It's just another tool basically to throw in the bag. The interesting thing with video games is that the majority of those now probably require the most acting of any voiceover art there is, whether it's commercial, promo, because the characters, even though it's in a box, they want them to be very, very real. And even if it's a future character, a monster, it still needs to be real. It's like, we talk about efforts or dying. I mean, some of these can be, it's like, okay, in this one scene, basically they poured gasoline on you and lit you on fire. Well, that's, when you hear people going, yeah, that was a great session. Your throat can get ripped. We did 3 days on the Warcraft movie, and it was like every scene in the movie is a battle. And it's all orcs that are yelling, and it's just like, and you came out and you're just like, yeah, that was really great. It's a little taxing.
So did you say you were on the Warcraft movie?
Yeah,
or in
voice-wise, not because all of the CGI stuff, which 9% of it is, of course, all the creatures and stuff. Yeah, as far as all the hordes and the orcs and the yelling and the battle scenes and and kill them and do this and that. Yeah, that's all added dialogue.
That's fantastic. I didn't know that you got to do that. So was that considered ADR? Or?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
It was a great crew too. There was about, I think 8 of us, 10 of us, something like that. And it was just, and the way it works, you basically sit there and they'll go, okay, here's the next scene, you come up, you get perfect, great. And then you take over and you're that guy. So it was a lot of fun. It's interesting to see the finished thing when you see, because it all rolls together so smoothly. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, Mark, aside from all the amazing voiceover things you've done, one of the things I was curious about was with the voiceover industry, what led you to end up owning or designing and creating your own studio for voiceover? And I was also curious, what does it take for someone to own and operate their own studio?
Basically, the studio, it kind of went hand in hand. When going back to when I was working at this music studio, I had, this was at that point, late 70s, early 80s, they decided to close the media studio. This was still in the time of called lockout sessions, where Rod Stewart would come in and Warner Brothers would pick up the tab for him to have the studio for 6 months. It was very funny. It was 3 brothers that owned the studio. So when the big contracts like that came in, they'd all come cruising up in new Ferraris. And as things started to dwindle, it was like, oh, look, it's a Ford Escort, And it was really quite this studio was, Michael Jackson, Motley Crue, Journey, Roy Thomas Baker, that was the producer of Journey and the Cars. The Cars were, so it was really a high level thing. And that part of it was great. Massive amounts of what people were doing back then, which thankfully we got through that. All the no stuff. It was pretty ridiculous. The wild stories you hear of a Hollywood studio and cocaine, well, those were true. Thankfully, everybody came through that. That is way, way, way past. But when they closed the media studio, Studio 5, I actually somehow, I don't know how, talked them into selling me the studio on time. I had no money, no credit. I lived in this awful, in East Hollywood, just a guest house behind a Yugoslavian landlord that would come up, Mark, you're a cat shit my yard. What are you talking there? It's no, they're not park here. It was like, okay, great, And slowly but surely built the business up in this little guest house, which in essence the studio took up half the house. I was raising my daughter on my own, and the booth itself had bunk beds, and then I had a little pulley thing that would pull, and curtains would come down, and it would be this booth, and pulled it off there well enough to move into a little tiny space in Hollywood. It was about 600 square feet, and it was like, oh my God, this is a commercial, but can I afford this? That kind of thing. And things went well enough there that doubled in size, tripled in size. And then the neighborhood was on the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and North Gramercy Place. And then the area got it was like, why, look, you're not a woman. Could you please put that away? So from that studio, then made the move out to Burbank. I've been out in Burbank about 33 years, I guess. Started off a little bit smaller there, and now the studio is 17,000 square feet with 5 studios and an ADR stage and a big staff. It's great. And I've just been very, very, lucky. And I think, part of it is always going a little bit that one step above, and always really priding ourselves, not necessarily playing the keeping up with the Joneses, but having a sound that really, really jumps out at you. and even engineers, when hiring engineers, bringing them up through the ranks, because it can't just be, even if you're doing producing a voiceover demo for somebody, that thing needs to jump. It needs to grab attention. It's not like here's a music. Oh, look, the theme from Rocky. You want to do something that really grabs attention and is wow. And that's kind of how that was built. And then it just, at this point, thankfully, most of it's word of mouth, just because it's probably, it's the oldest voiceover studio in Burbank, and probably one of the oldest in LA as far as sole proprietor, probably one of the oldest in LA at this point. It's not a corporation or partners or anything. So,
well, that's fantastic, especially with, having that kind of unsure start and being able to come out so strong. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Been very lucky, that's for sure.
Absolutely. You definitely sound like it from how you grew. I loved when you were explaining pulling the little cord, I imagine, and then like a red drape coming down in the curtain, kind of in your original setup. And I was like, wow, that's very ingenuitive.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Well, Mark, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who might be interested in joining the voiceover industry?
Honestly, I think, first, training, absolutely. Realize that especially with now all the pay-to-plays, the sites and stuff, anybody can throw their hat into the ring. And that's good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. On the other end of the spectrum, an agent has a vested interest in getting you work. A legitimate agent does not get paid unless you get paid. So there is a reason for that. And they become your front line and you become a commodity and they're actually selling you. And so that's, lots of auditions in that process. The thing is, be true to yourself. Don't just jump in and go, and do a demo at home, because people, and that's not a push because I produce demos, but you can spot that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And realize that if you're throwing your hat into that ring, internet wise, you're now competing with all the people that you look up to or mentors or whatever. You're now competing at that same level. So, yes, you can have a USB mic at home, and that's great, and use Audacity or something, but those tracks need to be very, very clean. And do what you do best. If you want to get into animation, you really need to be in LA for that. That's pretty much a given. Video games, a little wider net, because there's so many. That's tapped to hit $87 billion next year, which is about probably twice what the movie industry is. So they're looking for a lot of time, and they will cast a very wide net because it's recorded singularly. A lot of that time you can be at home, but those tracks need to be very, very clean. And realize the acting chops, that's what sets you apart. If you auditioning 300 people for a role, they're all reading the same copy. So why are they going to hire you?
Yeah.
So you need to bring something very, very different to that role and inject yourself in it that makes them go, wow, that's the guy. And that's the most, it's not just reading, people, everyone says I've got a great voice. And it's like, well, that's great. But if you're talking like this all the time, people will probably get sick of it. It just, you need to be able to, even if it's promos and that's your bag, great. But there's a way to do that. And be prepared for it. Don't just go, because again, in many instances, it's a one-time shot with a voiceover demo. As talent, we will listen to that demo 412 times and go, God, do you hear how I say on nobody else is hearing that. But at the same point, it needs to grab your attention. You don't want to be, that's why you should go on down here to Bill's restaurant because they have steaks and burgers. That's great, and yes, you're getting immersed, but get yourself, if you want to move up the rank kind of and move up the ladder and play in a little bit larger league, be prepared for it. There's certainly room. Is it competitive? Absolutely, positively. It's very competitive. But any business really is. And if you stay focused and go, this is what I want to do, there will be many, many detractors, people that don't do this, think you're nuts. My dad, again, who was anchor at Channel 5, was probably the biggest detractor of all, especially with the studio. It was, well, what the hell, what, do you think you're just going to come into Hollywood and you don't have any backing, you don't have any, dad? It was like, no, I can do it. And then I think he came by and Debbie Reynolds was there or something, and then all of a sudden it was like, wow. Really? It was like that was different. So he realized it. And I think that's true with it, realized that we all started in the same place, with an idea of going, wow, that would be cool to do. But, the voice stuff, get some training. And again, just so you understand what the process is, even how the industry works. It's not just clanking in and throw, oh yeah, they're sending me, it's costing me $500 a year and they're sending me auditions and I'm sending them out. And most people you'll talk to, and I'm not booking anything. Well, you want to book something.
Yeah.
all of the, sites like Fiverr and stuff. I know there's a huge issue over that. It's like, well, you can't believe somebody would do that. You're destroying the industry. It's personal to you. If that's what you want to do, fine. But realize then that's probably the level you're going to stay at. I mean, it's no different than if you take a job that's a menial job that's paying minimum wage, and you have no desire. You may have desire, but don't ever do anything about it. You're not gonna all of a sudden jump from that to CEO of the company.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if that's there's a process you need to go through. So if you set your sights a little bit higher and start out a little bit higher, then you'll continue that. I mean, if somebody's paying you $20 to do a commercial, you're not going to go to them in 6 months and go, I rethought this. I'm thinking $500, because I have a feeling they'll probably tell you to go to hell. I don't think it will happen. And again, it's the same thing even with union versus non-union. There is an immense amount of non-union work out there. Union job, most agents, legit agents, are franchisee or sanctioned. They have to be SAG-AFTRA franchisee, meaning that's the actors that they use. It's great because there's residuals, there's money, but the non-union stuff, I understand. That's a moral compass that you set to wherever you want. There's an awful lot of non-union stuff that pays very, very well. And that's up to your personal choice as to do it, not do it, whatever you want to do. My personal feeling is, hey, it's hard, again, if this is your chosen profession, do what you can do, but don't give it away and go that, well, I'm just getting my feet wet, so I'll even do stuff for free. Well, why? If a guy's just starting to paint houses and you're the first house, you don't go, well, do it for free and let's see how it goes. It's like, no, set a value on what you do. Absolutely.
I really appreciate you saying that, because I've even, looked at getting into the voiceover industry myself. And, I have kind of had that thought of, hey, even if I could just do something to get some credit out there just so people could hear me, and I never thought about it like, as a painter, you're not going to go paint your first house for free just so they can say, hey, oh, wow, you can paint, So
well, and the thing is, with credits, realize, too, that there's people that, I know there's been stuff on a couple of the pay-to-plays with national spots.
Yeah.
It's like, there was one, was posting like at a normal rate. One was posting, when we know which ones, we don't need to say it, at an absurd rate. We're absolutely screwing everybody and taking a huge, like an 80-90% commission. Well, a lot of people were jumping under the pretense, yeah, but it's an ad, people will hear me. Well, not really. I mean, that's not going to do it. In other words, an agent's not going to go, God, get me, that voice is great. I mean, it's still a lower paid, realize, yes, the more stuff you do, the more immersed you'll get, the more comfortable it is. What I call, when I'm coaching, it's basically changing the muscle memory to your brain. Because when you look at a piece of copy, it's not yours, it's somebody else wrote this, so it's not the way necessarily you would speak it, and it's foreign to you. It's like right now we're speaking naturally. You're not thinking of the words and forming them and coming out your mouth. Well, when you look at a piece of copy, voiceover, if you're getting into it, immediately assume, ooh, I have to billboard that, and it's on sale now. And it's like, that's not necessarily, unless you're doing that Sunday, kind of thing as a bit.
Yeah.
But again, the training stuff, I think, is very, improv and acting shots, because that's what it is. That's what it all is. I mean, even if it's just a straight commercial spot, doing, especially somebody with a background in radio, doing a natural guy next door read is tough, because, well, what do you mean? I am a guy next door. And it's like, no, you sound like you're a KHJ. It's like, so it's getting in that mode of looking at a piece of copy, knowing where you need to go, and your brain doesn't overthink it. It's like Homer Simpson with the wheels going. It's like, no, you just look at it, you know where you go. That's what gives you a much more natural kind of feel to it.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you diving into that and giving me some advice, and my listeners, because I definitely learned some things there, and that was really fascinating. Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Well, do you have a website or a way in which people can reach out to you or check on, more of the information about you in your studio?
Yeah, I do. My personal site and for coaching, demos, that kind of stuff it's www.mark.grau, Graue. That was my parents that did that. Damn them and their stupid non-use of consonants. But yeah, it's mark-grau.com. The studio site is Fix in the Mix, www.fixinthemix.com. The studio site is more relegated toward the business side as far as, our big clientele that comes in. We do ADR for Supergirl and Justice, a lot of a lot of stuff, big TV shows. We do a lot of first run ADR, a lot of commercial work, video games, that kind of stuff. But the studio obviously is the clients, basically that kind of thing, where my side is more in the vein of, let's get you rolling in this business. It's more specific to voiceover talent, where the studio is more client based.
Absolutely. And you brought something to mind that I had forgotten about. I remember seeing your post where you had the Supergirl logo on your screen and you were like, hey guys, look what we're working on. And I was like, holy cow, that is so awesome. As Mark had just mentioned, everyone, that they did do ADR work for Supergirl. And what are some of the other shows that you've done besides World of Warcraft and Supergirl?
Honestly, it depends on, you seriously would have to look up. I can tell you here really quick.
Okay.
Because what's terrible is the brain goes and it's like,
I understand. Believe me, mine does all the time.
Well, it becomes quite a large, kind of thing. There's so much going on that we forget really where we're going with stuff, because it becomes, extraordinarily busy. If you go to fixinthemix.com and click on the ADR stage, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, My Christmas Dream, The Flash, Falling Water, Legends of Tomorrow, Death of Ace, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's like The Flash. There are, good Lord, let's see, just offhand here, right now there are 315 ADR credits.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And it's everything from movies to, we did stuff on, the Ron Howard movie, Heart of the Sea. We did some ADR, which was actually it was a fun session. We were locked up with Pinewood Studios in London. And you've got the actor here locking up the picture, everything is fine. And all of a sudden, hang on, the director wants to jump on, and the director was Ron Howard. It's like, wow, it's Ron Howard on the line. I mean, that was, one of those kind of like, well, that's kind of cool,
Yeah.
So and ADR is a different beast, kind of a thing. But yeah, we do tons of that. NCIS New Orleans. I mean, there are all kinds of shows. I mean, it's kind of across the board. We do a load of that. And again, the studio is much more in that we record a lot of video games there as well. Fallout, all that series. I mean, all kinds of stuff. So a lot of cartoon series, lots of commercial work, a ton of ISDN, Source Connect, all of that kind of stuff. But again, it's more specifically for like a client that's looking, like a video game developer that's looking for a studio, because they know our rooms are tuned very, very well. I mean, they'll come in and the specs on some of these games are incredible. It's like, we don't want a noise floor any higher than data, and ours are like so dead, you'll go in and you can actually hear your heart going in your ears. You can hear the blood.
Wow.
Which is what you want.
Yeah.
And the rooms are big. Studio 4 can accommodate 15 people in the control room and probably up to 15 in the booth, which for a voiceover studio is huge.
Yeah, that's massive. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's, smaller Studio 5 is probably the smallest room, which can accommodate, 3 people, ISDN, Source Connect, all of that. And you can, all of them you can do to picture. There's ISDN lines in all the studios. And that's an interesting question. People say that ISDN is on its way out. Not yet. It's still, because it is a proven thing. And when you're dealing with sessions, Source Connect has gotten better. They're using that more and more, but those are the two mainstays that people use to connect with. The thing being, when you're dealing with big projects and thousands of dollars and stuff, that's not the place where you go, wait a minute, that's dropping out, or like, it's, you don't, trust me, you don't want to be the one to tell William Shatner, we have to do that again because we lost the date. That's not going to be a good day.
I bet, well, with the ISDN, I have heard that, but I've heard it more so on the individual side than on the commercial side, just because I've heard it's going to become more expensive or something to run, but I don't really know.
It's horrendously expensive now. It's stupid.
Okay.
I mean, now some places you can't even get installation for it. But if you do, the installation is expensive. The codec itself, whether it's a CD-Q Premium, a Telos Zephyr, whatever you're using, the box itself is a fortune. And then you have to pay not only a monthly charge, which is for digital phone lines, but you have to pay for usage, which can get, if you've got because it's dual lines, you've got one sending, one coming back. So if you're paying for 2 digital phone lines for an hour-and-a-half session to London, yeah, it can get a little expensive.
Ooh, I bet.
But but again, if it's a large movie, a big video, that's fine. That's not even, or even a big ad if we're doing McDonald's spots or
it's nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I really appreciate you diving into some of the ADR stuff that your studio has done, because, the show is all about voiceover, but it's also about the different aspects of voiceover aside from just animation, and especially video games, which are very well known. But there are so many other industries within the voiceover industry that people just don't know as much. And
Sure.
So I really appreciate you kind of diving into the ADR stuff, because it's fascinating, because there's a lot of people that are watching The Flash and Supergirl and, the new World of Warcraft movie. So that's fantastic. It's up, it's in the now, and everybody is going to know these things.
The interesting thing with that too is that it's not just always the principal coming in, the principal actor of the series coming in and doing stuff.
Yeah.
Walla groups. It's like, the background that you hear on, all of the hospital shows, that's all added. They're on a sound stage. So they're, Dr. Smith, please, line 1, and all the stat and all the noise. That's all added after the fact. They're not in a hospital shooting this with all that noise.
Yeah.
It's very, very quiet. So that's all added. The Walla groups, or loop groups, they're amazing with that. There's a big difference between adding, background noise for a police station in 1952 versus the futuristic, sick bay on Star Trek.
Yeah.
Obviously, the background noise and what's being said is going to be much different. But there used to be a guy in town named Bert Sharp who was an amazing ADR supervisor. And people would come to him and go, well, it's this scene, it's Sylvester Stallone, but he's in Pakistan. And Bert would actually go, what province? And they'd and they'd find out, and he'd have 2, 3, 4, 5 guys on his thing that would come in and speak, Pakistan in the background, so it sounds very, very real.
Wow.
Even though, again, they're on a sound stage or they might even be on location. But a lot of that time with location sound, it's so bad. We had to redo, this guy had shot a movie in Texas during the summer, and most of them were exteriors. Well, the cicadas are like, and they're all, it's like crickets from hell. So we had to redo. It was good for us. And we had to virtually redo every single line because that's all already buried in the production audio, and there's nothing you can do with it.
That is crazy. Wow. Well, I know how Texas can be. I am a Texas boy, but I moved to Oklahoma to marry my wife. We met on eHarmony. So, but I definitely know how Texas can be.
There you go. Well, there's a quick one for the doc.
Yeah.
He used to actually come in and do all of his spots. We were shooting a show once, and he came up in his Bentley, and one of the PAs was like, "You can't park." It was like, yes, he can. He can park wherever he likes.
Yeah. Well, I have one final question for you today, Mark. And the question is, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
Just, a body of good work, and the fact of being, honest and above board, and just, being good. I always tell people, even when I'm doing classes or coaching, it's like the one thing too, give something back. We are all so extraordinarily blessed to do this. And it's paid for 2 divorces and 3 kids through college. A rather large, retarded Weimaraner that I just rescued from she's 120 pounds, Molly, the studio dog. But it's been very good. And so, give something back that has nothing to do with the VO stuff. We can all get this business can get very engrossing where, you've got stacks of copy. I've got things here, it's ridiculous, and jobs, which is great. And we get caught up in that, and it's great. But realize the human side. Don't lose that. You still have your family. I, of all things, got very involved coaching special needs teams. And it's the most endearing, sweet, heartwarming, because they don't care. Some of them, with the video games, they'll go, but it's a very sweet, it's great to go someplace where they don't care.
Yeah.
They're not basing on what you did or it's just like, it's coach. And that's a very sweet, and it's kind of a nice leveling experience where it makes you human and, makes you not start going, well, that does smell good. God, I am something. It's like, no, you're not, man. You're just human,
Yeah.
and just enjoy the ride. I think that's the key too. I will be 63 here in about a month and a half.
Wow.
And
Happy early birthday.
Thank you. And I still love it. I still enjoy what I do. It's fun. The studio, yes, there's the business aspect, as any small business thing, to deal with that part of it. But it still is, to be immersed in this business and to have done it this long and be successful is wonderful. And that probably is the biggest legacy of all, is just the fact that I was an okay guy, had a very bizarre, weird sense of humor, but life was good, and that there's nobody mad going, why that's not, hopefully there's nobody out there that's upset with me. And that's probably the biggest thing about, well, other than the ex-wives, but
Well, Mark, thank you so very much for being on the show today. It has been an absolute honor and pleasure having you. Would you just give us a closeout today?
Certainly. Man, y'all been listening to Who Did That Voice? Now I'll smack your head. Excuse me. We're listening to Who Did That Voice with your gorgeous, wonderful host. You have a beard. We can do Mr. Why not? You're listening to Mr. Zircon. Mr. Zircon no like Who Did That Voice. Me kill Mr. Zircon. Again, man, thanks for having me. I'm just here being silly, winging it. This was a pleasure, absolutely, buddy. And I again, if anybody has any questions, I'm very open to emailing me too. Go ahead and email mgrsburbank@gmail.com. I'm actually pretty good about getting back to you. So if you have a question, email me. And have a great day. And realize we're doing voiceover stuff, so we're all idiots, but we're having fun.
Thanks so much, Mark. Have a great day.
Thanks, man. You too.
Well, everyone, I don't know about you, but I was sure laughing really hard during this interview. It was really hard not to laugh at some of the stuff he said, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And if you did, please stop on by my Contact Me page at www.whodidthatvoice.co. I'd love to hear from you, and we will see you guys next week. Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening to the show. This is a special shout out to you, whether you're a national or international listener. I can't thank you guys enough for your kind words, comments, and emails. You guys are so great, and I wouldn't be here without you. The show's only 5 months old, and we are growing strong. The year's almost over, but we are going to finish strong. And the year to come, 2017, is bound to have interviews you won't want to miss. If you missed our Christmas special, the radio drama called The Christmas Wish, it aired on December 18th, and you will want to check that out. It's pretty awesome. I hope you guys are doing well. Merry Christmas, and I hope you keep listening to Who Did That Voice. Well, everyone, that's all the time we have for this episode. Join us this Sunday, December 25th, Christmas Day, for our Christmas Day interview with Lauren Lester, the voice of Robin from Batman the Animated Series. You won't want to miss this episode. Hey, are you ready to win some awesome prizes? All you have to do is like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter for your chance to be instantly and automatically entered for your chance to win.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for more discoveries on Who Did That Voice.